in 2 Samuel 16. Okay, Absalom, David's son, grew up as a spoiled brat along with the rest of his other siblings from what we saw from the last few weeks. And we're going to see what happened today if we look around in popular places. The popular kids, wealthy kids, they get by with everything. Because most of them are, a lot of them are spoiled brats. Yes, 2 Samuel 16. See, they grow up thinking that they are above all other people and have expectations that they should be treated as such. David, as you knew, grew up on the countryside. He was a country boy like we are. He had to take care of himself, his flocks. He had to learn firsthand. He was always on the run. When he was out there, all the dangers. Absalom did not have any street smarts and was therefore vulnerable to the ways of intrigue. Recognizing that he was not in succession to his father's will to be king, he decided to do it on his own. So he arranged a coup. When David had learned of his son's conspiracy to take over, he understood completely the situation and all possibilities that could happen. Because he knew Absalom was out for blood. And it wouldn't stop with just him. It'd go through his whole family because he wanted power. He wanted his way. So to protect the rest of his family and other innocent residents of Jerusalem, because he was afraid that Absalom, anybody that followed him, he'd go and kill them. He decided to leave town. And now we pick up David's flight. When David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, who met with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, "What do you mean with these?" So Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread is summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink." Ziba was the servant of Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, to whom David had brought into his household and treated him like he's his family. He met him with donkeys and food, and he thought he had this great need. But this was a packed palace, and he just had left, so I don't really think he needed it right now. But he did not turn it down. See, we must recognize that at the precise time when Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, arrived with all of his provisions, David was not thinking straightly. Had he been, he would have realized that the likelihood that Mephibosheth really thought that Absalom would establish him on the throne, that there was no real possibility. All knew that Absalom would not have gone to all the trouble to see someone else put on the throne. Rather, he himself claiming the throne as the son of David. They never even considered it before. Even immediately after Ishbosheth's death, why should they consider it now? But it was made clear to us by Absalom's rebellion had shaken David's confidence. David did not know whom his friends were, who he could trust, because this was his own son out to kill him. He didn't know how many of his other family or of the tribe was out to get him now. Thus Ziba told him, that it was Meshboth who appears to believed it, and the result that he assumed Ziba, that from now on all pertained to a traitor, that Meshboth was a traitor to him. So then Ziba speaks out against Mephibosheth, and the king said, "And where is your master's son?" And Ziba said to the king, "Indeed, he is staying in Jerusalem. For he said, Today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father to me." So the king said to Ziba, "Here, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours." And Ziba said, "I only bow before you that I may find favor in your sight, my lord, O king." See, he told him that Mephibosheth was staying in Jerusalem because he thought he was going to be king. You know, Absalom would not go to all this trouble just to let him be king, would he? I mean, he was going against his own father. If anything, he would have come more killing Mephibosheth, because he would maybe thinking that maybe the house of Saul would uprise against him. See, these were lies, and they were going to be revealed in 2 Samuel 19. See, he actually left him there to make it look like Mephibosheth was on Absalom's side. Like he done the 200 last week, he took them into Hebron with him innocently, it says. That they was not on his side until they was just brought into it. See, this report from Ziba hurt David because of the time of crisis. The last thing he needed to hear that another friend of his, someone that he loved, had turned against him. Ziba was utterly despicable, and the more so because at the moment of sorrow he brought to David's heart. And David was feeling that his kindness toward Mephibosheth was ill requited. It was shameless, it was slander, and it was uttered by a false and faithless person. So David, because he didn't know what was going on, he was acting on the only information he had. He assumed that Ziba had told the truth. Therefore, he rewarded his loyalty and punished Mephibosheth's reported disloyalty. That was exactly what Ziba wanted. Ziba is an example of someone who wickedly uses a crisis to his own gain. Someone who will use you to attain what they want. Thank you. Now when the King David came to Bahurim, there was a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. Coming from there, he came out, cursing continually as he came. And he threw stones at David and all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were who on his right hand and on his left. Also Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you are caught up in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. See, the man was from the family of the house of Saul. Shimei, he was a distant relative of the former king. And he still resented David for taking over the throne. He cursed him. He threw stones at him. He called him a bloodthirsty man. He was as offensive as a person could be He wanted to destroy any shred of dignity or confidence that David had left. There are always people ready to rejoice when a leader falls. Shimei had this heart against David for a long time, but he could only show it when David was down and out. It's very hard to bear a cowardly attack. One is very apt to reply on the use of hard words to one who takes advantage of your position and deals a coward's blow. And this was what Shimei was. He was dealing a coward's blow. Only a coward strikes a man when he's down. See, the Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, and you are caught in your own evil. See, a quick look at the outward appearance of things seemed to confirm Shimei's analysis. But he was wrong, wasn't he? None of this came upon David because of what he did to Saul or Saul's family. It's what he did because of what he'd done to his family with Bathsheba is why all this is coming on him. See, David actually treated Saul and his family with great love and graciousness. Shimei was wrong because David was not a bloodthirsty man, because he had all the times, three times he could have killed Saul and his family, and he did not do it. David did not bring Saul or his family to ruin. Saul brought his own family to ruin, and later on we'll see that Saul still has sons. David could have went in there and killed every one of them, but he did not. Shimei was right that the Lord had brought this upon David, but not for any of the reasons that Shimei thought. See, the place where Barham was a place to which Patel, any of y'all were here when I was doing the lesson, where Patel had followed McCall crying because he wanted her back. That was his wife, Michal, was taken by Ishbosheth and returned to David. It was also the place at which Abner had commanded him to go back home. It was a place where the spies who would leave Jerusalem would also hide. And it was just beyond the Mount of Olives on the way to the wilderness. There were many in Israel, especially among the Benjamites, which was the tribe of Saul, who resented David. And that comes out in this incident. In some ways, Shimei must have been a very brave man to do this to David. Because here he was surrounded by his mighty men. They could have killed him just like that if they'd wanted to. If he had actually been a bloodthirsty man, they could have killed him, couldn't they? You know, can you imagine somebody hurling stones at you and kicking the dust up to you? It's symbolic rather than intended to cause harm. The symbolic indication that David was dirt, that he was not wanted in Israel. So, and he cursed, "Come out, you bloodthirsty man." The word of his curse are now described for us. It was a call on David to be gone because he was a man of blood and a base fellow. This was one heart that he had not won, certainly had he. His view was that David had come to the throne by trampling over the blood of Saul's family. They had given their lives for Israel, and then David had taken advantage and seized the throne, which was incorrect to the way it happened, because David had gone all out of his way not to harm any of his family. See, he himself was learning what it was like, for it was clear even his own son was not able to stand his ways and had rebelled against him, who had done to him because of his sinful behavior and especially because of his bloodthirsty and murderous methods. And you know, David had murderous methods because of the way he done one of his warriors, didn't he? Uriah. To Shimei, looking from the outside and not knowing the true facts. You know, that's how it is sometimes with us. We'll see stuff from the outside, not knowing what's going on the inside, don't we? That's where gossip starts, isn't it? People start saying, well, you know that person. What I've seen of them, it's just been terrible. Where they're doing right, doing good, but what your persona of them is different from what God's persona of them is. See, to God, God is the only one that can forgive them, David. The man has nothing to do with it. Because David was a man after God's own heart. In man's eyes, David should have been stoned and should have been put to death. But God had a purpose for him, and it was not for that to happen. See, to Shimei, David was a bloodthirsty tyrant who was getting what he deserved. And this is often the lot of God's servants, to be misunderstood. Then Abashi, the son of Zerah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take off his head. See, he didn't want to listen to him. It angered him, didn't it? To curse the king was treason. And Abashi, David's nephew, was one of his generals, turned to David and said, why should this dead dog, that's why he was called Shimei, he was nothing more than a dead dog, curse the king? To a man of Abashi's experience, climbing up a ridge would have caused him little difficulty. He could have went up there and killed him just like that. But what he did not realize, that he was in fact, if he did do this, exemplifying the very attitude which had been given David his bad reputation. Because this would have shown that maybe he is bloodthirsty. Maybe he is going to do that. But the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zula? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so? See, David didn't try to shut him up, did he? He didn't close his ears to unpleasant or clerical words. David was willing to hear what God might say through a cursing critic. If David let Shimei speak because he saw the hand of God in every circumstance the Lord had said to him, he knew that God was more than able to shut him up himself if the Lord did not want him to say that. So David didn't need to give the order. See, he was more concerned not to kill men. It was a reminder here that although David could slaughter men in battle with the best of them and could carry out any measures that were necessary without cringing, he was not into killing hapless people just because they displeased him. He said, let him alone and let him curse me. David could take his fellow's head off at any minute, couldn't he? Let him alone, let him curse. Then David reveals Then David said to Abishi and all the servants, "See how my son who came from my own body seeks my life? How much more now may this Benjamite? Let him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day." See, David revealed something of the grief that was tearing at his own soul. For he called on Abishi to consider that his own true born son was trying to kill him. Forgetting the ties of blood, he was intent on seeking his life because he had been offended and to further his own advantage. He was offended because David did nothing. When David was the king, he did nothing to avenge his sister Tamar to his firstborn son. So now he was taking work into his own hands. At least this man, Shimei, was demonstrating his loyalty to his family, the Benjamite house of Saul. So let him alone and let him curse. It was obvious that Yahweh had bidden him to do so. David was acknowledging by this the fact that it was coming home to him that he himself had displeased God. But since the main charge was not true, even though it appeared to be by the relatives of Saul, because they were going on rumors. And you know how rumors are. They spread real fast like fire. David would return good to him because of the cursing that he was receiving. In other words, that he would give him blessing for cursing, and because the cursing had been unfair. Okay. I can't live. No, and as David and his men went along the road, Shimei went along the hillside opposite him and cursed as he went, threw stones at him, and kicked up dust. So leaving Shimei to his own devices, David and his men went their way while Shimei walked along the ridge up above them, kicking and throwing stones, cursing. It was his way of all the pent-up anger of years of being revealed, and there would have been many others who probably felt the same way. We've all been mad like that before. I'm the kind of person, when I get mad, if you see me crying, you better watch out. Because I have a, ask Mike Harris. I don't get mad much, but when I do, if you see me crying, I have no, I get very angry. Just all I'm going to say. Shimei was in fact a wealthy man, a man of influence among the Benjamites, able to do considerate harm. Comes out later when he was able to bring 1,000 Benjamites to David. He was a man to be regarded and watched. Now the king and all the people who were with him became weary, so that they refreshed themselves there. See, here they had hurried out of Jerusalem, and with all the organization and rushing around, it had clearly taken a toll on them. Can you imagine a whole family just trying to grab what clothes you have, because you don't know when you're going to come back. You don't know how long they're going to be fighting. Trying to grab some food. If you have little ones, you're trying to grab the stuff, diapers and whatever they need, because you're going to be running. You know, David ran for what, 4 years before at one time? So you're not going to have, you're going to have to think about, because Abigail and Anatham both had been on the run with him all that time. So they knew how it was to be on the run. So meanwhile, Absalom and his revolutionary forces, together with Anathar, arrived in Jerusalem, where they immediately met with Hushai the Archite. I think I skipped a verse, didn't I? Okay. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Anathar was with him. And so it was when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom. Okay, last week Hushai he wanted to join David. But David told him, no, you go into town with the two priests and their sons. That way you can be my eyes and you can give him bad counsel. It's like putting spies in there in Absalom's court. And Hushai said to Absalom, long live the king, long live the king. So Absalom said to Hushai, is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? And Hushai said to Absalom, no, but whom the Lord and his people and all the men of Israel chooses, his I will be, and with him I will remain. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in your father's presence? So will I be in your presence. So his friend came to him. He wanted to leave with David and support him, but he thought it was better to send him with Absalom to spy. The bad advice from Hushai, who thought necessity, because Anathar was with Absalom. Anathar was famous for his wise counsel, and David wanted someone on the inside of Absalom's leadership who might frustrate Anathar's counsel. See, he lied to him, and you know, when he said that, oh, here's the king, he didn't say which king, did he? Long live the king. He didn't say long live King Absalom. So, the arrival of Jerusalem of Absalom along with the people is described. Absalom and Anathar together intended to kill David. Absalom because of what happened to his sister, and Anathar because of the insult to his royal grandfather, the king of Geshur. And Anathar because of the distress that David had brought on his family by his behavior with Bathsheba. See, he was Bathsheba's grandfather. That was his granddaughter. It was a powerful combination, and both arose from David's original sin with Bathsheba. See, all of this was under the control of our holy God. That we observe advancing to meet Absalom is God's answer to Anathar. For unto the scene comes David's friend, Hushai. This cry, long live the king, was a regular cry recognized as an offering of official recognition of the king spoken of. But he failed to declare precisely which king he meant. So he asked him, is your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? So Absalom is a traitor, and he was ready to accept other traitors, wouldn't he? And he made a joke at Hushai's expense for he bore the official title, the king's friend. And he asked, "Is this how you behave toward your friend? Why did you not go off with your friend?" But it was clearly not a pressing question, as is indicated by the ease in which he would accept Hushai's counsel. He would have not done that if he had thought there was a possibility that he was still with David. But he rather saw him a chancer like himself. He thought, well, David's done all this stuff, so he thought he was going to join Absalom now. Absalom's humor, but the fact that Absalom was blinded and he had took the insults of being directed right back at him. So furthermore, whom shall I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in your father's presence, so will I be in your presence. He, Hushai, pledged his royalty to the reigning representative of the house of David in the terms that David had suggested. David knew Absalom did not have street smarts. He would accept anybody that he thought that was on his side, and he'd do what he thought was what was good, wouldn't he? Absalom would. Because Absalom was a people pleaser. He wanted to please all the people. He wanted people to be on his side. And that's how he wanted to reign. That's how he got all of Israel to join him. Because he sat at this gate for 40 years thinking about it. Sitting somewhere for 40 years so you can take over a kingship. He was cunning, wasn't he? Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give advice is what we should do." So he called on Ahithophel as a leader of advisors to advise him to the next step. And I said to Absalom, "Go to your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that you have abhorred by your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on top of the house. And Absalom went to his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as one that had inquired of the oracle of God. So all the advice of Ahithophel, both with David and Absalom. Okay, go to your father's concubines. He told him to do something so offensive that it would eliminate any possibility of father and son reconciliation of them. There was no way they could be reconciled together. He thought this would give courage to his followers. And where did David first see Bathsheba? On the roof, under a tent, taking a bath. So where did he pitch his tent at? On the roof, under a tent. See, in the ancient world, taking the king's concubines was not only an act of immorality, but it was also an act of treason. This is a way for Absalom to not only replace David, but it was also to completely repudiate his father. He would be a stink to his father. Why did he give him such radical advice? Because it was his self-interest. He had the most to lose if Absalom and David reconciled, wouldn't he? Because he would be considered a traitor, he would be rejected, and he'd probably be killed. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on top of the house, and Absalom went with to his father's concubines. This disgraceful act said a lot about Absalom. Why do you think Absalom done all this? Because he knew what his sister had went through, didn't he? He done the same thing to these women that his brother done to his sister. So it also said a lot about Anathophel, who must have had a strange sense of satisfaction in seeing David's whim violated in the similar way that his granddaughter Bathsheba was, because she was forced to be brought to the king, just the way these concubines were being forced to bring to Absalom. See, this tells us that Bathsheba's father was Elam, 2 Samuel 11:3, one of David's mighty men. It also means her grandfather was Anaphal. This shows the power of bitterness. Anaphal was willing to see these women abused, just like Absalom was the abuser, like he had saw his sister abused. Absalom's grievously sin and the kingdom of Israel suffer greatly, all to satisfy his bitter longing for revenge. This disgraceful incident also shows that God kept his promise to David. I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun, for you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel, before the sun. Every part of this conduct of Absalom shows that he has been the most awful young man. He was proud, vindictive, adulterous, incestuous, a parasite, and a fine reprobate to every good word and work. Now the advice of Anaphal, which he gave in those days, was as one who had inquired of an oracle of God. He had a well-deserved reputation of giving good advice, but he gave this advice in revenge. He was also for giving counsel almost as good as God, but this time his counsel was foolish and destructive. It was foolish because God answered David's prayer by prompting Anaphal to give this foolish counsel and then prompting Absalom to take this foolish counsel. Absalom thought he could establish his kingdom through immorality. He was clever, he was a skilled politician, but he was ignorant of the ways of God. See, Anathol was aware that all of Israel would be watching to see what they was going to do, and to be unsure of which side they should support. Then, and for he must make it apparent that there could be no support between him and his father, that Israel would have to take a side. They'd either be on David's side, which was God's side, or they could be on Absalom's side, man's side. See, what he done was an indication that he had taken over all that had pertained to David. Second Samuel 17. Anathoth said to Absalom, I would choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of David. I would attack him while he was weary and weak. I would strike him with terror, and then all the people with him would flee. I would strike down only the king and bring all the people back to you. The death of the man you seek will mean the return of all. All the people will be unharmed. This plan seemed good to Absalom and all the elders of Israel. You notice that Israel's on his side right there, don't you? But Absalom said to summon also Hushai the Archite, so we can hear what he has to say. When Hushai came to him, Absalom said, Anathophel has given this advice. Should we do what he says? If not, give us your opinion. Hushai replied to Absalom, the advice of Anathophel has given is not good this time. You know your father and his men who are fighters, and a fierce is wild bear robbed of her cubs. Besides, your father is an experienced fighter. He will not spend the night with the troops. Even now he is hidden in a cave or some other place. If he should attack your troops first, whoever hears about it will say, there has been a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom. Then even the bravest soldier, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt with fear. For all Israel knows that your father is a fighter, and that those with him are brave. So I advise you, let all Israel from Dan to Beersheba, as numerous as the sand on the seashore, be gathered to you, with you yourself leading them into battle. Then we will attack him whenever he may be found, and we will fall on him as dew settles on the ground. Neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. If he withdraws into a city, and then all Israel will bring ropes to that city, and we will drag it down to the valley until not even a piece of it can be found. Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that of Anathophel. For the Lord has determined to frustrate the good advice of Anathophel and bring disaster on Absalom. See, David prayed, didn't he? He prayed that that's the only thing he could do. He done what he possibly could. We see God doing his will. If we compare the two counsels, it's difficult to tell if Hushai's advice is the better one. The author even mentions Anathophil's advice as good, don't it? We must believe a wise advisor working for David and then taken in by Absalom. And David must pray that he will give foolish advice to Absalom. I'm telling him what to do. See, Anathophel suggested taking 12,000 men and launch a direct attack on him. It's simpler and it takes shorter time to form up. And if he strikes right now, kill David, it won't cause a civil war. Everything will be fine. But Hushai's advice to rally all the men from the tribes of Israel will take a lot more time. Give David time to rest. In Anathophil's plan, he leads the army. He is not a warrior but an advisor to the king, yet he wanted to lead. He wanted to be the one to kill David. He wanted to be out ahead and do it all, didn't he? See, he is Bathsheba's grandfather. We do not know how much of this stems from his resentment against David. In Hushai's plan, Absalom will be personally involved in the battlefield. Hushai wanted Absalom to lead because he knew the only way this could overcome David is if Absalom died. You could not have Absalom as a king and David as a king. And the scripture says, "For the Lord has determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom." If this is God's will, then Absalom needs to be in the battlefield. The author seems to suggest that Ahithophel's plan is the better one, the good advice, yet Absalom has decided to go with Hushai's plan, because God has determined to frustrate man's evil plan and protect his King David. Verse 14 is the sovereign act of him. See, Absalom had the smartest man of Israel on his side, but David's prayer was more mighty than Ahithophel's intelligence. See, God led Ahithophel to give foolish counsel that was listened to, and he allowed Hushai to give great advice because God was in control. God had purposed this. This is one of the greatest principles of life which every page of the Bible emphasizes. God has purpose. He is in control of us, our lives. All we have to do is trust Him. See, where we fail a lot is we lose our trust in God. We don't have that trust. We want to do everything on our own, what we want to do, no matter what God is telling you to do. We always listen to this other little voice a lot of times. That's why, as Mike calls them, boomerangs we have. Because we listen to the wrong advice. So the Lord will bring disaster on Absalom, and all this there was a severe chastening for David, and he knew it. David knew what was happening to him. That God was chastising him for what he had done with Bathsheba. He warned him about what was going to happen. And see, now we see David praying. It doesn't talk about any of the other before David got out into the woods and on run is when David was the closest to God. You know, sometimes that's how God puts us in a position where we have to fall on our knees and be close to Him. He'll put us into a place that we do not want to be to bring us to our knees. But we have to trust that He knows that He's in control and He will guide us and be with us no matter where we go. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask you to trust everyone here. Dear Lord, just be with them, dear Lord. I ask them to trust you, to love you, dear Lord, and to get in your word and know what you want for them. That everyone here has a purpose, dear Lord. That all they have to do is just trust you. In your name I pray. Amen.